Good afternoon and happy Wednesday to everyone for another working from home webinar. You've got 3 for the price of 1 today. We've got 3 great people from Receptional who are going to be talking about 10 cost-effective marketing tactics for every content campaign. Just a bit of sort of house rules to start with. There's a chat feature on the side of this video where you'll be able to say hello or talk about anything that the guys are talking about. And there's also a poll which is live at the moment. Which channels are you using in your online marketing? So it'd be great if you could vote on that poll as well. But for now, I'll hand over to Justin, Dave and Lee to introduce themselves and to run through their presentation. And I'll be back at the end to ask the guys any questions. So thanks again for everyone to join in and for the 3 of you. So I shall hand over to you and speak to you in a little bit.
Excellent. Cheers, Rob. Thank you very much. So I'm Justin. I'm just going to share my screen with you so we can look at the slides that we've got coming up today. And thank you very much for joining us here. There's a good number of people, and I think a few people are still logging in the moment. So I think the first thing to say at the moment is just I hope that everyone's healthy and well. Those are the main priorities, aren't they? And I don't know, I felt over the last few days, at points kind of a feeling of helplessness that kind of, I'm not a doctor or a nurse and, I have very little medical understanding, and there's not a great deal that, that we can do to help out in that way, apart from, volunteering for the NHS and to support in that way. But then when we got together as Receptional, we thought, well, there's certain things that we can do, and they kind of tie in with the webinar series that Rob is running with the Content Marketing Association, which is to help people understand kind of where we are. And we're thinking about this in terms of, search marketing. How are people interacting online? Because there's a lot more people online than there used to be. So for example, Google tell us that YouTube views are up 20% in the last couple of weeks, so there's more people at home, and I think as marketers we want to understand, how the market is changing, how people's behaviour is changing in today's circumstances, and if we can help out in that way, and we've got a particular expertise in generating new business, and I think there's lots of businesses out there that could benefit from our expertise. If we can help in any way, then hopefully that's our contribution to kind of to all the efforts that are going. So let me stop jabbering on and introduce the other 2 speakers I've got with me today. So Lee and Dave, give us a wave. And I think between us, we've got experience across paid social, paid search, SEO, content marketing, you name it. Between us, we've covered it, and we'll all be contributing in what I hope is a fairly informal way today, so that we can have as good a conversation with you as possible. And we're going to be covering 10 points. And very much the idea, without going into any of these in detail at the moment, is that we try to find opportunities for you that are either free or cost effective, which we don't feel that many marketers are using. So hopefully within these 10 points, there will be something in there for you that you haven't seen before, which you can take back to your businesses and use in the future. At the same time, we're also going to be running a poll on the right-hand side of your screens. If you're able to fill out that poll, I think it will just allow us to benchmark everybody's behavior. Because one of the reasons why there's 3 of us here today is because the most difficult thing, or one of the most difficult things in online marketing, is to have a really integrated approach so that all the different channels you're using are working together. And all we're doing here is just benchmarking which channels people are using, because that will allow us to see whether there may be some opportunities that other people are using those channels and maybe you're not in your business. And that might then kind of spur us on to test some new stuff that we're not testing at the moment. And so if you could fill out that poll, we'll come back to that at the end. And we'll also come back with any questions. So what I always say when I'm running a webinar is that I will answer any questions that come in. So if you've got stuff that's not clear as we go through, then please just put questions on the right-hand side, and we will answer as many as we can at the end. And if we don't get through all of them, then I promise that we will follow up by email and we'll answer all the questions that come in. Not even today. If you've got a question in a week's time, happy to answer it then as well. And that's a guarantee that I always make in my webinars, and I've responded to lots and lots of people over the years. So yes, fill out the poll, and we'll come back with any questions at the end. So the times in which we're living, I think, are some of the most bizarre of my working life, of my life in total. But over the last few days, I've been thinking about perspective, because always when you're in the eye of the storm, everything seems difficult. But if we can look with historical perspective, there are parallels to where we are now. For example, the financial crash of 2008. The twin towers. I was working in the city at the time, and the feeling was very much like it is today, that everything just stopped. But I think one thing we can say about where we are at the moment is that it is a temporary blip, and business will come back to normal. It may be a different scenario in which we're working in the future, but business will come back. That's absolutely certain. And so I've been looking at kind of some of the business learning around kind of what businesses do in a downturn that sets them up to be able to grow, not just trundle out of the downturn, but to really take that hockey stick upwards so that they really grow out of that downturn and transform their business. And there's a really nice piece from the Harvard Business School looking at the last recession and looking at businesses and how they coped with it. And it was really, they analyzed hundreds of different businesses, and what they said, there were some businesses that cut really hard and cut early, and there were some businesses that took the counter view and they invested really hard and really early. And actually, both of those businesses had the least chance of success. And what they said was that the firms that did best took a progressive approach. So yes, they cut back where it was necessary to cut back. They kept costs under control in the short term, but also they invested progressively. So they invested in areas where they felt there was opportunity. They invested in research and development, and they invested in marketing. And obviously that's what we're talking about today. And that's the purpose of this webinar, is to find the 10 different tactics that we might use that you can invest in now that will set you up for that hockey stick of growth in a few months' time. So let's crack on with our 10 tactics. So the first one is to invest in your data. Now is a fantastic time to review your data and understand where you are. If you're not tracking conversions properly, if you're not understanding kind of where your business comes from, now is the time to take stock. So you can see on the screen there's lots of different ways in which you can track user behavior, whether it's Google Search Console, Google Analytics, Tag Manager, and the rest. We do a lot with Google's Data Studio at the moment in terms of our reporting. But there's one thing that is much underused, which is LinkedIn. I'd like to introduce Lee to come and talk about LinkedIn's demographic tool. Lee.
Thanks, Justin. Hi, everyone. So I thought I would kick my part of the presentation off today, talking about probably my favorite free digital marketing tool in general, actually, and one that I have a suspicion that most marketers aren't really using to its kind of capacity. So as mentioned, this is called the website demographic tool. And it's within the kind of the LinkedIn suite of products. So most of you as kind of content marketers, I suspect, will be using Google Analytics to get a kind of holistic view of your audience, devices they're using, locations they're coming from, etc. But LinkedIn has kind of the equivalent tool that you can use to analyze not just traffic generated by LinkedIn, which would be reasonably useful, but not greatly useful, but actually all of the traffic coming to your website. And it has some really cool extra dimensions that you don't get anywhere else. So as you can hopefully see on the slide, some of these include learning the job titles and the company names of the people that are visiting your site. So as you can imagine, this is immensely valuable, especially as content marketers, because it gives you an insight into, who's reading the company blog, who might be clicking on your sort of advertising campaigns, etc. It's completely free, and I think can really kind of inform an overall strategy. In terms of getting this up and running, you do it through Campaign Manager, which is the kind of the advertising side of the LinkedIn platform. Crucially, you don't need to ever run an ad to set this up. No credit card required, etc. You'll just need to add a snippet of code to your website. But we're more than happy to help out and sort of provide some guidance on that if required.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lee. And I just put your email address up there. So if anyone wants to use that LinkedIn Analytics tool and needs help getting it set up, then just get in touch with Lee and we're more than happy to help. And for me, that's, a really useful tool, not just in B2B markets, which is where we, associate with LinkedIn with business to business, but also business to consumer. If you knew the job titles and the companies where your audience worked, I think that's useful insight into kind of the sorts of people who are buying your products or visiting your website. So that's incredibly useful useful. So that's point number one. Let's move on to point number two, which is about refocusing your ad spend. Dave, come center stage.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Dave. I'm an SEO and content marketing lead at Receptional. We recently built a tool called SearchBridge, and it's a keyword efficiency finding tool which helps inform our decisions over which PPC campaigns to maybe reduce spend on by looking at organic performance, i.e. if a keyword's performing particularly well organically and is quite expensive to run and has a high CPA, we consider reducing PP spend in that area and reinvesting that budget and effort in either other PPC campaigns that need a boost or in organic search and keywords that could be boosted further organically. So that's what that green box in the right-hand corner there illustrates: PPC or keywords that are ranking well and have a high CPA. And so, yeah, budgets saved get diverted into other areas of for our clients, so we can streamline activity and be as efficient as possible. And with everything that's going on with coronavirus at the moment, this tool is proving particularly useful. As we know, a lot of people want to pare back on their PPC spend and save costs where possible, while at the same time, things aren't converting as well as they have been historically. So we've been using this tool to pull back on PPC intelligently, knowing that where ranks are there to capture that traffic and where keywords are expensive to run, we can kill those campaigns off temporarily. And so my tip here is simple. Before turning off that paid activity, check out your other channels, see what they're doing to drive traffic. And particularly if you're ranking well, turn off those PPC campaigns and then consider to reinvest those budgets elsewhere. As Justin just mentioned, we know that this is temporary. It's not going to be forever. And so we strongly advise our clients at the moment to invest in those channels, the long-term channels, which sometimes get put back on the back burner, i.e. PPC, i.e. SEO, content marketing, etc. So now's the time to invest in those channels, using the money you're saving through your paid activity. And so, yeah, now's a good time to put together those business cases for your marketing heads to reinvest in those channels. And we believe that those who do will see the benefits. And that leads me on to some SEO tactics for you at the moment. There's in SEO land, there's always quick wins to be had. Perhaps your sitemap needs updating, perhaps your robots text isn't fully configured. Image optimization is a great thing that your developers can be working on in the background, decreasing the size of your images so that your websites perform faster on mobile devices will help your organic ranks. Now's a good time to start looking at all your 404s, so your broken pages, and redivert or redirect those internal links elsewhere to pass what we call SEO equity to the correct pages and boost ranks there. You can also do one of my favorite SEO quick wins is called a historic redirecting, which is where we look at your backlink profile to see what links are pointing to your website that are pointing to pages that no longer exist. By putting redirects on those pages, you can direct that equity to pages that you want to rank. So now's a really good opportunity to get those projects underway that often get overlooked.
Thank you very much, Dave. And do you want to talk about content as well? I'm sure that'd be of interest to this particular audience more than others.
So one of my favorite quick win strategies for our clients is optimizing their existing content. Obviously, all too often, content marketers get engaged in creativity and wanting to create exciting content strategies. Actually, a lot of our clients tend to have existing content that some of it will perform well, but some of it isn't going to always perform as well as it could. So we perform a historic content audit where we look at what content has particularly high impressions in Search Console, but doesn't have the clicks, has a low click-through rate. Because we know that those pages with a little bit of a push can actually be put on perhaps they're currently on the bottom of page 1 or page 2. And we know that with a little bit of a push, we can get them at the top of the search results. And the impressions in Search Console give us that data. So we go back and look at which content has the most potential. And with that, we look at the metadata. We use our customer insights to inform better written copy. We look at the structure and layout of that content. Often we implement schema markup because that can help with certain types of content. And we always make sure there's a really strong call to action on the content as well. So if we do land traffic, it's not just you're not just entertaining a reader, you're actually giving them something to do afterwards that hopefully will lead in a conversion of sorts. And we've seen off the back of this that some clients can have a click-through rate of 0.3, and that can go up to, we think on average, around 10% click-through rate for a well-optimized article, which is going to give you a lot of traffic at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great suggestion, because it makes the best use of assets that already exist. And so you're not having to invest in new content, but you're getting more traffic from content that already exists and you've already created.
Exactly. And one of my other favorite strategies is to steal your competitors' content strategies. We do a content gap analysis regularly for our clients, where we would use a tool like SEMrush to look at what competitors in your market are particularly strong in a blog content sense. And then we look at what keywords they rank for that you don't, and are able to use that to produce a content strategy. And the numbers there at the bottom are a real example, I can't say who, but where a client of ours, a competitor has 23 unique articles. And the search volume of the keywords associated with those articles came up to 121,000. And in SEO, we say that if you rank number one for any keyword, you generally get about 32% of those clicks. And so if they produce this content and rank really well for it, we estimated they could drive an additional 39,000 visitors. So it's a good strategy for, also if you've been doing content for a long time and you can't think of any new ideas, have a look and see what your competitors have done, because they might have thought of something you haven't. So SEMrush is the place to go. It's got a really good keyword gap analysis tool there. And I recommend that activity. Is good use of time right now.
Excellent. Cheers, Dave. So then I think it fits in with what we're saying, doesn't it? Is that you need a plan for coming out of the downturn, and this gives us an editorial plan for the months ahead. You can even be creating some of that content now so that it's ready and published and attracting traffic for when that traffic comes back again.
Exactly.
Excellent.
And it's not just the written word that we're interested in. Yes, I mean, writing blogs is great, but sometimes a particular theme or set of keywords could be quite competitive or warrant an extra push. So rather than just do a written blog, you could perhaps do crowdsourced content. There's a lot of people at home at the moment who could get involved in the content you're producing. Likewise, you could do an expert roundup. So there's probably a lot of professionals out there who are, again, at home and might have some spare time. Why don't start engaging with those experts in your niche and asking if they can contribute towards your editorial and do expert roundups that way. That way you don't have to write the content either, which is quite efficient. You could do vlogs and video content right now. Now, everyone's at home, so just it's a great opportunity to practice how you are on camera, and maybe put some of that content out on YouTube, which I know Justin's going to talk about later. And also their thought leadership. A lot of leaders at the moment at home, not all in their pajamas, but some maybe. Now's a great opportunity to engage some of your leadership team and ask, well, why don't they start putting pen to paper and write down some of their wisdom and put them out as blog posts, as thought leadership pieces. So those are some really interesting ways I think we can repurpose your existing content in the current climate.
Thank you very much, Dave. That's great. And you're around for questions at the end. So if anyone's got questions on any of the points that we've raised there, then put them in the box and we will come back to them in about 10-15 minutes time. But you'd mentioned YouTube, and YouTube is a channel that I've been talking about for a couple of years now, and I'm very passionate about. I think it's massively underused. And I've just put some data there, which comes from Ofcom. So it's independent data in which Ofcom have been measuring how people watch YouTube compared to other channels. And the fact is that amongst 18 to 34-year-olds, which is a target audience that many of us in our businesses will want to be targeting, watch more than an hour a day on mobile devices of YouTube. And actually, the amount of YouTube that's watched is greater than the total of BBC, ITV, Channel 4, and Channel 5 combined. Which, when I saw that figure, I realized how, that YouTube was popular. But in fact, it's more popular than you realize. I think there's about 10 million people a day in the UK visit the YouTube app. It's the most popular app, both on Android and on Apple. So, it is phenomenally popular. And And there are some fantastic targeting methods in YouTube. I haven't got time to talk about them now, but you can now target anybody who's searched on Google for a particular keyword that you might be interested in. You can target those people on YouTube. So someone who's searched for, the example I often use is divorce lawyer, because we have a client who's a divorce lawyer. Someone who's looking for a divorce lawyer and hasn't clicked on one of your ads on Google and hasn't reached your site through the organic listings, you can advertise to that person on YouTube, because Google has access to that data because it owns YouTube. So I think there's some phenomenal opportunities. You could be advertising on your competitors' brands. So you could have a list of your competitors and you just advertise to people who had searched for your competitors in the last 7-day period. And some fantastic opportunities. Haven't got time to talk about all of them now, but YouTube is something that you should be testing and measuring over the next few weeks and months, so that you're ready with your YouTube campaigns once the downturn has ended. And then if Lee, you wanted to come back in again and talk about looking beyond search.
Yes, thank you very much. So I think in PPC, really, we're all a bit guilty of putting search on a bit of a pedestal, and there isn't always method to the madness, because actually in reality only about 4% of all time on the internet is spent on search engines. So I thought I would kick off the sort of PPC segment of the deck, just sharing some data and a study that was put out last week. So this is by a very smart guy called Mark Irvine. He's probably the world's _1 PPC expert, working for a company called WordStream. So what this is saying is, in the kind of current climate, the number of people searching for sort of products and services is notably down, but overall internet usage is kind of following the opposite trend. As you can imagine, we're all sat at home, behind screens more than ever. Whether that's procrastinating on YouTube, which has led to sort of a 21% increase in view time, or just browsing the internet. I'm reading more news articles than ever, and those kinds of websites are included in the Google Display Network, which is accounting for that sort of notable increase. Next slide, please.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks. Perfect. So the first kind of area of opportunity I wanted to kind of just glance over today is kind of display marketing, mainly because I think it's had a bit of a bad reputation in the past, with people just kind of associating it with those annoying banner ads that follow you around the internet, which is an entirely valid kind of interpretation. But actually, in the last 18 months or so, Google is probably investing in this kind of paid product more than any other. So I'm kind of alluding to what I'm sort of seeing as a bit of a renaissance in kind of display ads. So if only sort of 4% of all time on the internet is spent searching, well, if you want to kind of get a larger slice of that pie, well, then the display network covers 3 million websites and applications across the internet. And you can reach 95 and 100 kind of global internet users. So if I could kind of point your attention to the graphic that I may or may not have stolen from a Google presentation. This kind of just highlights that the user journey is sort of more complex than ever before, and obviously in certain industries buying cycles can be incredibly long, and in others it's shorter, but there are still these sort of touch points as we go along. So in any kind of given purchase, you might be looking at reviews on YouTube, on a laptop. You might be searching for a store on Google Maps, revisiting their website on a tablet, for example, just to kind of give an example. So what connects all of these dots is the Google Display Network. So it's your chance when they're in that kind of buying mindset for you to put your brand present. So when they're warming themselves up and looking into an area and they're ready to kind of get the purse strings out, it's your brand that's kind of at the front of their minds, really. So one kind of common objection to display, which was entirely valid, is that, I'm a small business. We don't have the graphic design capacity to put together those kind of traditional banner ads. Well, the good news is for some time now, Google has been refining an alternative, which they call the responsive display ad. So I would think of these as kind of DIY ads, really. So the way these work is you provide a series of headlines, a series of descriptions, and just a collection of assets in terms of images or video, as you know, along with a company logo. And then Google's algorithm, its machine learning, will actually construct adverts for you to fit specific placements and particular people. So it really does the kind of creative work for you, and that's completely free. And they look a lot better now than they used to. So if anyone has tried this in the past and not been impressed, definitely worth revisiting. On average, a responsive display ad is converting about 20% higher than a static image ad. And if you introduce these into your existing branded campaign, then you're seeing potential sort of 50% uplift, which is kind of not to be missed out on.
No, that's a really good level of improvement. I remember when I first kind of came across the idea that you know, Google's machine was going to create display ads. I thought that's nuts. But actually, it's the testing, isn't it? It's the kind of you know, Google has got enough data to be able to test different versions of the ads that they know what works on a particular device and in a particular context, and so they can show the right ad that's appropriate to that individual, which we as humans can never do. So I think that's, you know, a really nice thing to be testing if people haven't already looked at that recently.
Definitely. It's all about sizes as well, because if you imagine all of the different size placements that are across those 3 million websites, you know, you can only create so many static ads at a certain pixel size. Whereas if you use the responsive ads, then they can transform to fit kind of any spot. So you're just getting a lot more coverage than you'd have managed otherwise, really. So to kind of to leave you with a one sort of advanced tactic when it comes to display. So for me, these kind of webinar series are about giving you a little bit of our playbook in terms of the strategies that we're using with clients, so that you can go away and sort of and try the same. So this particular tactic, you may or may not have heard of. I think it is quite a novel approach, and it uses a feature called the custom intent audience. So the question here really is, what if I told you that you could remarket to instead of your website visitors, people that are visiting your competitors' websites? So that is entirely possible through display and a custom intent audience. So the way this works is, instead of building an audience or attracting audiences through keywords, what you can do is you can input a list of URLs. So in the competitor example, these would be rival pages on your competitor sites, or it could be industry blogs or publications, or those other kind of places online that your audience is sort of hanging out. So you can build your audience from the people that visit these kinds of places, and then you can show those banner ads that we just talked about to these individuals. So it's a really great way of getting in front of the right kind of people. And I was sort of joking with Dave that in my view, I see this as a bit of an SEO shortcut, because, you know, you have a selection of kind of key target keywords that, you know, you would love to be page one of Google for. But that isn't an overnight thing. That, you know, there are a few months of work that go into that. But what this allows you to do is to search your keyword, create a list of the kind of, say, top 10 pages that are coming up for that keyword. So these are going to be your kind of best competitors typically, and then just build an audience off of the people that are just going to those pages through organic traffic. So it's a way to kind of for want of a better word, leech onto the for real want of a better word, to leech onto that traffic and get your kind of brand in front of them as well.
Yeah, I absolutely.
So it's really about, I think the takeaway is thinking about display and flipping it on its head. So usually we think about display as bottom of the funnel remarketing. Well, there is a whole host of tools now which allow you to use display at the top of the funnel to prospect new traffic, to introduce new people into your kind of ecosystem. And then obviously you can go and retarget those elsewhere, potentially on paid social.
Yeah, and it's a great way of building a brand. We're now, while people aren't necessarily buying as much as they were, investing in your brand.
Definitely. So we talked about kind of a top funnel strategy there. So to kind of move on to remarketing. This is probably my favorite topic, as Justin is fully aware. My catchphrase is targeting your lowest hanging fruit. So we've had a lot of discussions internally, obviously, as a digital marketing agency, about the current climate, and how should we advise our clients? Should they be pausing all budgets for the foreseeable? Should they be spending more? Should they be doing something in between? And the answer is probably something in between. So the question for me becomes, well, if we're going to leave some lights on, which ones do we leave on? So for me, my first port of call is always remarketing. And it's the same now as in kind of normal times, if you like, quote unquote, normal times. If we were kind of going to a new client pitch tomorrow, and this was 6 months ago, the first thing I would be suggesting that they invest in is remarketing, because these are your lowest hanging fruit. These are the people that you've already invested a lot of time and effort to get so far along your funnel, and you'll see the best return on spending that little bit of money to get them over the line. So just to kind of whistle through the points I've got here. When it comes to remarketing, I think it's really, really important just to be sensitive to the current climate. So making sure that your messages are reflecting the kind of new world that we live in. I don't know about you, but I've been seeing on social media and the odd email campaign, even hearing on the radio, adverts that you can just tell have been running for the last 8 weeks and are tied to the kind of current situation, and are doubtless doing more harm to the advertisers than good. The second point, so if remarketing is something that, hands up, I haven't really been investing as much as I should have into, to give you a rule of thumb, so all of the major experts that I've spoken to at Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, they say a nice rule of thumb is to spend about 40% of your budget on remarketing in relation to about 60% on prospecting. So it might be a good time to experiment with, say, paid social media advertising or remarketing specifically, just because everyone is suddenly scrolling through Facebook every day, and there's a lot of attention to be sought after. And then finally, there's a lot of pressure at the moment coming from sales managers and finance directors about bottom lines and getting revenue over the line. And really your existing customer base or your newsletter list are going to be your best source of new business. Whether or not it's getting referrals to other businesses or just cross-selling and upselling different services. I would use remarketing as a way of having those conversations and really holding on and valuing your kind of trusted clients and customers.
Excellently. I think no complaints at all about using the phrase lowest hanging fruit. That is what we're talking about today, isn't it?
So finally then, this is kind of the last PPC tip from me. If remarketing is kind of my go-to, my kind of next trick and tactic would be to use what we call a lookalike audience. So I don't know how many of you are sort of versed in PPC, but for the odd person that might be unfamiliar with it, a lookalike audience is kind of what it says on the tin, really. So Google calls it a similar audience, social tends to call it lookalike, but it's all the same. So what we do is you provide a seed audience. So this might be a list of your current customers. It could be your newsletter list. It could just be website visitors that you have. You provide that seed audience, and then the various platforms use their algorithm to create an audience that most resembles that set of people. So really, for me, it's a data-driven approach to prospecting for new potential customers. I think often with social media, we're really guilty of logging into Facebook, guessing what our audience looks like, and then putting in the fields and building our own audience. And that's fine, but there's just an easier and kind of more foolproof way of doing it, and that would be to let the algorithm build that audience for you. So yeah, that would definitely be well worth exploring, and it's fairly new to LinkedIn ads as well now, so that is a feature available there. And if you haven't seen it before, there's a nice screenshot. So as you can see, super easy to set up. You provide a source audience, and then in the Facebook instance, you just have a slider. So you can say, I want to match my audience with the 1% of people in my target location that most resemble my seed, and you can drag that all up to 10%, which is obviously a much larger audience with less relevance, but will still have sort of shared characteristics.
Cool, cheers. And is it worth, because I know you've been running some really nice campaigns in the last couple of weeks, even with lookalike audiences, without giving away the client, just some sense of kind of how much you're generating leads for on one of those campaigns?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, so I sent over a report today for kind of the March activity that we did for a particular client, and we tested lookalikes for them for the first time, and the kind of cost per lead came back at just 99 pence a lead. Obviously, the kind of crucial bit of context there is that last month we were generating leads at about £7.50 for them, so it is sort of substantially cheaper. And yeah, easy to set up, to be perfectly honest with you, so well worth testing.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lee. And then our 10th and final point this afternoon is about investing in conversions. So I think there's some data from WordStream that's come out in the last couple of weeks to say that conversions in some markets have fallen by around 20%, and I'm sure the specific areas where it's even more than that. And one of the things that we always talk about at Reception is the conversion rate. It's relatively easy to attract traffic to your site, but is it the right kind of traffic? Does it convert well? Do you have the right messages in today's environment on your website? Have you reviewed your site and make sure that your messaging is consistent from your ad through your content through to your call to action? And is it a coherent message for the times? There's an example here of where we've done some work. We helped redesign the Kitty Karoo website, and that had a conversion rate of 0.3% before we started the work. That's for all traffic coming to all different types of content across the site, and afterwards it was a 1.7% conversion rate. And it wasn't a hugely expensive project to get that done, but it's made an enormous difference to that business in the first 3 months of this year. They've had a record first quarter, which hopefully will stand them in good stead for the rest of the year. But so investing in conversions is often one of the most cost-effective things that you can do, because you've invested all that money in marketing, getting people to your website. If they're then not converting, that's wasted spend. So increase those conversion rates in the weeks ahead, and it will stand you in very good stead indeed. So those are our 10 points, and then we've just got a little bit of time for questions. So I might flick back to the main screen here. Excellent. So looking down the side, we've got some questions coming in. So yeah. Please.
I can ask. I'll run through.
Go on, Rob.
Yeah, sure. Lucas said, could you categorize the 10 methods you mentioned into short-term and long-term, which will take some time, which will be relatively instant? Obviously, some will take some time, to which will be relatively instant.
Yes, good question.
Do we want to go through it one by one for each of our parts?
Well, I think we could perhaps look at it in terms of I suppose we could look at it in terms of PPC and SEO.
Yeah,
channels. What are the short term things, and what are the long term things? I think because there's no definitive answer. If we start with some of the topics that I talked about, which is YouTube, if you've got some video content already, then and you can promote that, then you can be getting results within 24 hours. If you haven't got any video content, then there's certainly some shortcuts that you can take. So Reception is a Google Premier partner, and we've got access to a little beta feature that helps you create videos really quickly just by using some photography or if you've already got some, and some key selling points, and you can create a 15-second video that looks just like a real video, but you can create it in using machine learning in about in an afternoon, and we can get those campaigns live and running and testing very quickly. Of course, you might want to then generate something more sophisticated if you get some good results back off those tests. But I would say, all of the stuff that we've been looking at should be able to get you some results quite quickly. Certainly YouTube is possible. Conversions, even if you were just reviewing the most popular pages on your website and checking that the call to action and the messaging on those pages is appropriate for the times, and making some decisions about how you want to change those pages. That can be done pretty quickly too. So hopefully all the stuff we've tested will get you some results quite quickly, but the aim is it also sets you up for the longer term. So Dave and Lee, in terms of your areas? Yeah.
So for me, the first thing I would look at is making sure that your PPC campaigns, where anywhere you're spending right now, is as efficient as possible, because you can do that instantly. the quickest strategy is to optimize your existing content, assuming that you have an amount of historic content that's got scope to be improved. By simply changing page titles is often the best, quickest win you can have in SEO land. So just optimizing your old content could be a nice quick win. But when it comes to technical, actually, that process is a bit longer. So you'd want to start that straight away if you wanted to do it at all, because the sooner it starts, the sooner it can be implemented and the sooner you can see the results. So it's not a quick win, but you want to do it quickly to get on that upward trajectory as soon as possible. The other thing is a lot of these channels are going to be running, or a lot of these areas we talked about are run by different people. So rather than sort of doing one then the other, you can actually plow ahead with both of them at the same time, I think. So there isn't a simple answer, as Justin said, but they're all as important as each other.
Yeah, in terms of my kind of items then for PPC, the first thing I talked about was the website demographic tool with LinkedIn. So when it comes to remarketing lists, I'm going to be saying the same as these guys really. It kind of depends what kind of position you're in at the moment. But if you don't have the LinkedIn Insight tag set up, I would strongly advise you to go away and do that today. I've actually started putting together, or I finished a guide to help you do that. It's just with our graphic designer at the moment, and then it will be kind of readily available to share. The crucial point there is that the remarketing lists you build on something like LinkedIn aren't historic. So if you want to do LinkedIn ads in 6 months' time, you need to start, you want to be starting to build that list now. In terms of actual kind of tactics and getting things off the ground, the custom intent audience, you can log into Google Ads, go into Audience Manager and start plugging in your competitor URLs today, and just draft that audience. You can see how many people are in it, what potential it has in terms of a potential forecast without having to actually go live. So I would say that is very quick and can kind of be up and running in an afternoon, certainly. And following on from what Justin was saying, with the kind of the responsive ads, where you don't need to go and create a brief, submit it to a graphic designer, get it signed off. If you have images, you can just upload them. So responsive display campaigns are super quick, and lookalikes is a few clicks if you want to kind of dip your toes with that.
Yeah, and I think, Luke, if you're working with an agency, they should be helping you prioritize these things, so that they're saying, here's the strategy for the next few months. And lots of people will want to kind of replan their work, I would say, at this point, so that they're kind of getting in some of those short-term wins as soon as possible. Now, Rob, you set live a poll at the beginning, didn't you? And
I did.
I'm excited to see the results.
Yeah, so there's been loads of people, a lot of people. I had to change it because apparently it was set up that people could only use one answer. So I've changed it and let people know. So they came back through. So obviously the question was, which channels are you using in your online marketing? 57% organic search SEO, 48% paid search PPC, 52% said paid social on Facebook, LinkedIn, 33% for display ads, 52% email marketing, and 33% YouTube ads.
Okay, that's really interesting. And those, and we've done that poll a couple of times with different webinar audiences in the last few days. And I say the proportions are probably about the same in each webinar. Sometimes it's kind of further to the right of the graph, but everything's further to the right because you've just got more active marketers and you have less active marketers. Yeah. But actually, things like YouTube is generally used less, display is generally used less, and I can't think of good reasons why that should be the case, given the kind of the machine learning that Google now has available to be able to create some assets to at least test. So I think there's opportunities there where people aren't using channels at all to start testing some of those in the coming weeks.
Well, I think, as you said, I think it boils down to a lot of the knowledge, isn't it? A lot of people don't think of YouTube, or they think they've got to have this massive production thing, whereas you've shown today, different things can be done fairly simply.
Yes, yeah, and yeah, it is just having that bit of knowledge and perhaps a little bit of help to kind of get stuff set up and tested, and then then you're not relying upon the same channels the whole time, which are always the most competitive channels. And if we look at the cost of advertising on YouTube, it's dirt cheap compared to anything else. Particularly in the last few weeks, prices have fallen. There's fewer advertisers and there's more people watching. I mean, it's counter-cyclical investing says invest in that area now, doesn't it? So people should be testing some of these new channels where we know other advertisers have perhaps pulled back.
Awesome. Well, thanks for everyone who's who's obviously registered and taken part today, and obviously the people who will be watching it on replay later on. A huge thank you to you guys. That was a brilliant talk, and obviously loads of questions going through, which Dave and Lee answered while you were talking as well, Justin. So loads of questions coming through. There was a few questions around SEMrush or SEMrush, however you want to call it. They're actually going to be doing a talk on Friday as well. So if you've got any questions that you want to put to them, feel free to register. The link is in the chat section there. You'll be able to register and speak to, I think there's 2 members of the team who will be delivering a webinar on Friday. And then, so yeah, feel free to, and hopefully we'll see you at another webinar. But again, thanks for all who have registered, and huge thank you again to Justin, Dave and Lee.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We'll send you a copy of the slides in case anybody wants a copy of those as well.
Awesome stuff. Thanks.